Hey, I was up here last night and I kind of liked it, so I'm back up here again tonight with a little bit more lighting and a little bit different lighting. I had in mind that I would talk about spirit. I mean, I always talk about spirit, but I want to talk about what I thought spirit was. When I first had the idea of what spirit was, I want to talk about that. Do you like my spirit glass? Spooky. I feel like it should be Halloween, but it's really just spirit time. When I was younger, I used to be, if I was going to fear something like of unknown, it always had to do with people. And it's ironic because now that I'm further away from childhood, I was going to say death, but now that I'm further away from death, I view things, and closer to nature, I view things scary like natural bugs and insects and all kinds of creepy crawlies. Those things scare me when I think about what they can do to me. But when I was younger, I spent a lot of time listening to adult conversation, so adults scared me. And I always wondered what the entities in my house were about. And when I was younger, I had a lot of time alone and a lot of time to reflect on things that were happening around me. I delved into all kinds of philosophical ideas at a very young age. And one of these ideas was where spirit played a role. And the reason why I was interested is because I was closely acquainted with some spirits. In fact, my house was right downtown Toronto, in the University of Toronto property area on a main street. And apparently before we moved in, it was being used as a brothel. So there was women of the night there. When we first moved in, men would come to the door and knock and, what's up? And they'd have to explain that it was no longer the same owner at the house. So eventually they stopped coming around. But apparently some one or two prostitutes were killed in my house. My house was an old Victorian 3-story house with very tall ceilings and 2 sets of staircases on the front and the back of the house leading to the 2nd floor, and 1 set of staircases to the 3rd floor, and 1 set of staircase down to the basement. The basement's a scary place. I had to do my own laundry, like even at 4 and 5 years old, as I recall. So that's where the laundry was, in the basement. It was an unfinished basement. It was just rough, dirty concrete flooring, very dimly lit, low ceilings. It was very musty smelling, and we used to use it as storage. And it always had a really hollow, damp, cold feeling that had a lot of shadows, and those shadows had a feeling that I can't express to you right now, but I can remember the feeling. So when I was having to do my own laundry, I would creep up the stairs, and I remember feeling like as if something was grabbing at my feet, and just that feeling, that cold feeling that something was grabbing at my feet. And I knew that if I stayed there and challenged it, that it would be a much stronger feeling than if I just booted and got out of there, slammed the door behind me. And that was an area, the door to the basement was an area that, you just didn't want to mess with going down there too much. I was younger. It wasn't a safe place for me. I knew it wasn't. So that's interesting. And I think that my parents were a little freaked out by the feeling at certain times of the house. But I had this idea when I was younger that because I was closer to death, because I was, 5, 6 years away from the time when I wasn't, that I had a closer attachment to the time that I wasn't. And so in that space I could see more than, say, my parents could. And in that space that the other energies knew that I was more open to seeing them. And that's the feeling that I got. I used to shut my eyes tightly and block my ears and put my covers over my head and block out all my senses so that I wasn't hearing and seeing these things in the middle of the night. And I used to play games with myself because I wanted to prove to myself that it wasn't mind trickery, that I really was seeing what I was seeing, and the visions and the sounds would prevail. And when I would block out my senses, they would block out, so I felt that they were something real. I used to be in my bedroom, which was on the second floor. It was between the staircases in the front and the staircases in the back. And because I grew up in this house, it was an old house with creaky floors, I knew every single creak in this house. So if there was a couple of creaks, I would know if it's at the front of the house or the back of the house or which floor it was on. It was very evident to me when somebody would walk through the house exactly where they were within the house. Every step in the front staircases had a creak, and I knew that creak. And in the middle of the night, starting at the bottom of the stairs and coming up the stairs one by one at the same timely intervals till it reached the top and started at the bottom again. And this would go on all night long. One time, in an absolute mortified fear, I ran into my mother's bedroom and she promptly kicked me out and told me it was just my mind. So I had to deal with these entities in a new way. I remember feeling like I had to maybe try to face them off. There would be like white clouds moving by my bedroom door. I would keep the door open, and the hallway was right there. So the lights of Spadina were great day and night, and I knew the lights of the cars and how they would hit the walls and the sounds of the cars outside. I knew that so well because it was such a constant sound. But when I would see these forms move by, I was so sure they were not just the lights passing. They were actually forms in the hallway, clouded forms that would come in 2 or 1 in both directions. And I would watch them and try not to look. And I remember in defiance one time I would look, and at that moment, and I will never forget it, and I get shivers just talking about it, at that moment, I remember that feeling of defiance and ready to face them. And they looked at me. One, as it passed, turned and looked right at me before they would just continue down the hallway. But this one turned its head and its eyes became clear. And I knew then that I wasn't going to be facing them again, because it was quite a force of an energy that I, at 6 years old, I wasn't willing to dive into. In the middle of the night, the rocking chair would be moving sometimes. I remember, as far as my parents realizing that this was going on, my mom and I at one point were sitting in the television room. We were watching television. There was TV rooms. And my dog was there, big old English sheepdog. So we're in the TV room. It's about 12 o'clock at night. I'm going to take another sip of this. And clear as day, that's what we heard, right outside the door. My dog heard it. He jumped like right off the floor and backed up, and every hair on the back of our head went up, and my mom and I proceeded to check the whole house, and there was nobody there. But I remember her sort of poo-pooing it, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. I was a young kid, and not really wanting to talk about it again. And who knows, she would just chalk it up. But I remember that being a really insane sound and feeling inside my house. I know lots of people have different ghost stories. I'll have to save some of these stories for another time, these ghost stories, because they can be long and involved. The other stories that I have, one is, I'll tell you later, was in an insane asylum, an old crazy house institution where many crazy things happened, and it wasn't only me that witnessed some things. It's in Whitby, Ontario, and it's since been shut down. Another one, went to an Indian reserve. My friend and I went walking through the forest, and we came upon a house that nobody had seen or heard of before, and I actually took some things from that house. I hate to say, to this day I still own a couple of things from that memory. That'll be another story for another day. Coming through this as a child, there was a couple things that happened, because it would have obviously, these entities at night would mix my dreams and my waking. So I was always questioning, am I dreaming? Am I awake? So there was this state of non-dreaming and non-awake that I would sit in my sleep. And I learned at 5 years old, I was, petrified by a lot of things that were happening at night. And by 6 years old, I was happy to announce to my mother that I could now control my dreams. And I was able to convince myself in my dreaming state that these people that were chasing me and these bad guys that were trying to get me in the middle of the night were just not real. And so I could manipulate those things. And actually I got in an accident and split my head open from here all the way to the crown, and went into a 2-week coma at the sick kids hospital. I stayed for 2 months. That time that they were trying to keep me awake and revived so I didn't fall into a coma, I was announcing to everybody in this state of my head open. They said they could see my skull, ton of blood, so necessary transfusions. And during this time I just kept saying, it's a dream, it's a dream, it's a dream, which allowed me to elapse into a coma. This is the narrative that I would have when I was sleeping, so that I wasn't feeling like that it was real. I wasn't scared of these crazy people attacking me. So now it's usually bugs that attack me. One of those times where I saw a white going by, it wasn't the door to the hallway. It was at night, like this, where it's dark outside and light inside, and I see something pass. And I was convinced that it was a ghost for a moment there, because the window was always my way to escape if necessary. So there was a little veranda from my bedroom window, and there was another window that looked out onto this veranda around the next room over, which was my mother's sewing machine room. And I always planned that I could open the window and jump out onto this veranda. And there was about a 4-foot jump across to the next roof, and that I could make that jump. And on that roof, there was another shorter roof I could jump down to, and a pole from that roof I could slide down and be on the street. And I knew that that was always my escape, never thinking once that somebody might come up that way. So, of course, I see a ghost going by my window, and I see it again, and I get scared and I run out. I'm wearing just underwear and an undershirt. I'm 13 years old. I crawl on my hands and knees into the dark room that is my mother's sewing machine room, and I see a man climbing into my bedroom wearing a white t-shirt. So I get up and I realize now I have to go past my bedroom in order to get outside. So I get up and I run. As I'm running, he's now at the door of my bedroom, and as I run by him, he grabs me. And he grabbed me by my hair and the back of my undershirt. And the force of me going forward, I kind of turned once I felt the pull, and as I get yanked back, I turned myself and hit him actually in the eye. I remember hitting him in the eye, and he kind of let go for a second, or he did let go for a second, because I hit him, I guess. I shocked him because I turned when he grabbed me. Next thing I know, I'm falling down the stairs. I didn't fall. I think I took those stairs in 2 leaps. So 1, 2, huge set of very steep staircases. And opened that door. I was out the door in 3 seconds, standing in my underwear, right downtown Toronto. So somebody who was parking a car put their jacket over me, and we went to the bar across the street and called the police. And I waited until 3 o'clock in the morning for my parents to come home at the bar. So these are a few of my spiritual memories. I don't think it's such a bad idea that I had when I was 4 years old. I could be closer to understanding spirit beyond my life, before and after. Big mysteries. Certainly don't pretend to have any answers, but I certainly don't have any disbelief in what I witnessed as a child. So, tell me your ghost stories.